Here are 101 facts about Chevy and GM. Number 1. You know how we all call Chevrolet Chevy? Well, apparently, they hate that. In fact, they hate it so much that in 2010, General Motors sent a company-wide email headlined, "Don't call me Chevy," where they told their employees to stop using that word because it was hurting the brand. Almost immediately, the email found itself in the public's hand, and everyone was outraged, saying GM doesn't appreciate their customers and they should be boycotted. Terrified, GM quickly retracted their email and publicly stated that they loved the name Chevy. Wow, guys, good on you for sticking to your guns. Number 2. When Chevy and Ford were designing their new trucks in 2017, Chevy decided to spy on Ford in the most legal way possible by sending their engineers to Ford's public factory tours to take pictures and videos of their assembly line. The engineers even took stopwatches and notepads to see how quickly each process was done. When this became public and Chevy was asked about it, they said, "Yep, we did do that," and there was nothing Ford could do about it. Number 3. Here's something most of you probably haven't noticed. Chevy used to give their cars names that started with the letter C, like the Corvette, Camaro, Cobalt, Cavalier, Caprice, and many more, because Chevrolet itself starts with the letter C. Number 4. In the early 2000s, Chevy's then CEO, Rick Wagoner, wanted a Corvette that could outrun Ferraris and was, quote-unquote, diabolically fast. So, he secretly set up a team of engineers and told them to go nuts, which they did, by taking a C6 Corvette, supercharging it, and then stripping it down to make it super light. And since the engineers really appreciated how Rick let them off the chain, they decided to call it the Blue Devil as a tribute to him, since Rick was a proud Duke Blue Devils alumnus. The Blue Devil was super fast and super dangerous, at some point even scaring the engineers from driving it. But they managed to button it down and make it safe. Well, safer. Later, as the car was nearing production, Chevy decided to drop the Blue Devil's name to something with more history, and the ZR1 was born. Fun fact, the first ever production ZR1 was painted blue, as a tribute to the test mule. Anyways, when Chevy was done with the Blue Devil, it was shipped over to the Corvette Museum in 2009, where it was put on display. But the story doesn't end there. In 2014, a giant sinkhole opened up and it swallowed the Blue Devil along with 7 other priceless Corvettes 40 feet deep. But guess what? The Blue Devil not only survived, it started right up. The staff were even able to drive it out of the museum and onto the trailer. The Blue Devil was restored 3 weeks later and put back on display at the museum. What a beast! Number 5. The Chevy logo is one of the simplest and most iconic logos to ever be created. It's also the weirdest because nobody knows what it means. Some say its designer, William C. Durant, saw it on a motel's wallpaper design, and some say he saw it in a newspaper ad, but none of that has ever been confirmed, and we're all guessing at this point. Number 6. From 1999 to 2006, Chevy gave every one of their trucks individual names from the factory. If you own one, you can find your truck's name and birthday behind the dashboard trim. By the way, those aren't the names of inspectors or factory workers, those are the names of the trucks themselves. Number 7. The Silverado is the most stolen truck in the US. Number 8. In the 80s, if you ordered a Camaro with the 5-liter V8, no AC, and the G92 performance axle, Chevy would, without your knowledge, install their secret performance package called 1LE, which included upgraded brakes from the Corvette, an aluminum drive shaft, fuel tank baffles, and special race-ready suspension, all completely for free and without telling you. Only 111 1LE Camaros were built from 1988 to 1992. By the way, Chevy didn't make the 1LE an official package until 2013. Number 9. As you guys all know, General Motors is the parent company of Chevy, and they currently own 6 brands. But funny enough, Chevy kind of owned GM in the beginning. Let me explain. General Motors was founded in 1908 by William C. Durant. Now, from the beginning, General Motors wasn't a brand and it didn't build anything. General Motors was a large corporate umbrella that acquired and managed other automakers. It was the first of its kind. And William? Well, he was at the forefront, quickly buying Oldsmobile, Buick, and Oakland, which later became Pontiac. Now, in the beginning, the investors were really happy because William made them a lot of money. But that didn't last long, because as soon as they hit some turbulence, the investors kicked him out of his own company. But Willie C. wasn't the type to sit down and cry. He was the unstoppable, vengeful kind. So immediately after being fired, he partnered up with Louis Chevrolet, an engineer who loved racing, and started the Chevrolet Car Company in 1911. Soon after, Chevy became a massive success, and William started using the profits from the company to quietly buy GM stock. By 1916, Chevy held the controlling stake in General Motors. William appointed himself as the CEO of General Motors. He then acquired Chevy, which he owned personally, in a reverse merger in 1918. So to put it simply, William created GM. GM fired William. William created Chevy. Chevy bought GM. GM hired back William, then GM took over Chevy, even though Chevy was larger than GM. Number 10. The Suburban has appeared in 1,750 shows and movies, which is why it's the only vehicle to ever receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Number 11. In total, Chevy has made around 300 to 400 million vehicles, meaning currently, they have produced the most cars out of any other brand. In fact, they've made so many cars that 2/3 of all the roads in the world have a Chevy present at any given time. Number 12. This is one of the most beautiful cars Chevy has ever made. It's called the Corvette Stingray. Now, this particular one you're seeing is one of the rarest and coolest Stingrays ever built because it has a split rear window, which was only offered in 1963 because two grown men acted like babies. Let me explain. In the 60s, the Corvette's head designer, Bill Mitchell, caught a stingray shark during fishing, and it inspired him to design the Corvette after it, with one of the key design features being the split rear window that kind of resembled the stingray's tail. Once he presented the design, everyone at Chevy loved it, except for one person, Zora Arkus Duntov, the Corvette's lead designer. Zora hated the split window because it destroyed the rear visibility and made it feel like you were driving a cement truck. So, he asked Bill to remove it, but Bill said no, since the tail was a crucial part of his design. Their conversation soon got heated, and the two almost got into a fight, with Billy Boy telling him, "You're not gonna ruin my car with your engineering." And instead of talking about this like two grown adults, the two got petty, with Zora trash-talking Bill about his design in the press, calling it a safety hazard, and Bill publicly saying he would take his name off the project if Zora wasn't kicked out. Now, for the most part, GM tried to stay out of it, but since the publicity was hurting the brand, they finally had to step in and make a decision. After sitting with both sides to hear their arguments, GM decided to go with the money and remove the Stingray's split window, because two windows meant twice the glass and twice the seals. And just like that, the year-long saga of the split window was finally put to rest in 1964. Number 13. The C5 Corvette was the last production car to have pop-up headlights. Number 14. The C8 Z06 has 13 radiators. Yes, you heard that right, 13. And fun fact, the Bugatti Chiron only has 10 radiators. I can't believe I just used the word only for 10 radiators. Number 15. Chevy, like most other brands, has sold products other than cars like beer, sausages, soaps, and coffins. Seriously, Chevy had licensing deals with funeral suppliers in the early 2000s to make Chevy-branded coffins. Number 16. Louis Chevrolet was in the first ever recorded motorsport crash in 1919, and what you're seeing right now is the actual recording. Number 17. During the Camaro Z28's testing in 2014, the engineers struggled to cool down the engine, and they tried everything they could without messing with the car's exterior. But nothing worked. The engine kept on overheating. That's until somebody pointed out that the Chevy logo was taking an awful amount of space on the grille. So, they removed it and the engine got 2 degrees cooler, thanks to the 3 extra cubic feet of air coming in. And since they couldn't remove the badge on the actual production model, they designed a new hollowed-out bow tie for the Z28, called it the Flow Tie, and bragged about it everywhere. Since then, the Flow Tie has been used on multiple different Chevys, including the commercial trucks. Number 18. 1959 Impalas used to come with chrome-plated, factory-optioned tissue holders. God, I want one so bad. Number 19. If you open the rear door on a Chevy before you start driving, the car will remind you to check the back seat when you get out. The idea is, if you open the rear door, you probably put something inside. Now, you might be thinking that feature isn't a big deal, but it absolutely is, because it has saved a lot of babies and pets from being forgotten in the back seat. I'm surprised more cars don't have this. Number 20. In 2007, Chevy decided to make an autonomous vehicle to participate in DARPA's Urban Challenge, where cars would drive around on a controlled course in lifelike conditions. And just to show off, Chevy showed up with a massive Tahoe nicknamed the Boss. Now here's the funny thing. During testing, the Boss was extremely aggressive. It would tailgate other participants and purposely cut people off. It also hated stopping at stop signs, and when it did, it refused to back down and yield to other cars. But why was it so aggressive? Well, because the engineers had to set its urban assertiveness level to high. Because for some reason, and I'm not making this up, it was afraid of left turns. The Boss had a real personality, a problematic one, but still, you could see why the staff often referred to it as he. Number 21. The Tahoe RST has a small Chevy logo that's projected onto the ground near the tailgate, and the reason why it's there and not in the center is because that's where you're supposed to kick to open the tailgate. Number 22. Chevy's co-founder Louis Chevrolet left the company after 4 short years because he didn't like the direction the company was heading in. You see, Louis wanted to build fast luxury cars, while Durant wanted to build affordable cars to rival Ford, and he got tired of constantly arguing, so he sold his shares for pennies on the dollar and exited the company in 1915. Years later, Louis was struggling financially, and he got a job as a mechanic at Chevy. Yes, Louis was a mechanic at a company that was named after him. In 1941, Louis sadly passed away alone, poor, and forgotten, but his legacy still lives on today. Rest in peace, bud. Number 23. Now, if you're a Chevy owner and receive a letter telling you your warranty has been extended, that's because your car is defective and it needs a recall. But Chevy doesn't want to admit it. Seriously, Chevy has been issuing secret recalls for decades and disguising them in the form of warranty extensions. The earliest example is from 1981, when Chevy sent out letters to 16 million owners extending their warranties without telling them their power steering systems were defective. Number 24. This is Rick Wilde, Chevy's then regional manager, and in 2014, Chevy sent him to the MLB World Series Awards to promote the all-new Colorado. But during his speech, he got so nervous that he described the Colorado as having technology and stuff. Upon saying that, he was quickly dubbed the Chevy guy and was clowned endlessly online. But surprisingly, instead of getting mad, Chevy started tweeting #technology and stuff, embracing the meme and even making it the Colorado's unofficial tagline, which actually boosted the Colorado's sales and helped Chevy from a marketing standpoint. Number 25. Chevy built the first ever crash test dummies designed specifically for cars in 1971. Number 26. In 2012, Chevy aired an ad during the Super Bowl where a bunch of guys who drive Silverados meet up in the apocalypse, and one of them asks, "Where's Dave?" with the other responding, "Dave didn't drive the longest-lasting, most dependable truck on the road. Dave drove a Ford." Upon hearing that, everyone went nuts, including Ford. In fact, Ford was genuinely pissed. And apparently, they tried to sue Chevy and NBC beforehand to stop the ad from being aired. But they failed, because Chevy knew they would do that, and they had lawyers present at the Super Bowl fully ready to fight Ford. But do you know what's the funniest thing? When Ford made the argument that Chevy misrepresented Ford's product reliability, Chevy responded to the press by saying, We can wait until the world ends, and if we need to, we'll apologize later. Number 27. When NASA was working on going to the moon, the big three all helped, but Chevy wanted the spotlight all to themselves by having astronauts drive their cars. But they couldn't just give them out, because at the end of the day, these were government employees. That's when they got the genius idea to give the astronauts a deal they couldn't refuse. $1 a year to lease 2 Chevys. Any 2 Chevys. So naturally, the astronauts all leased a Corvette and a family car. But Chevy didn't stop there. They also gave the employees at NASA a 20% discount. By the end, the NASA parking lot looked like a Chevy meet and greet, and the Corvette became the unofficial mascot of the space race. Number 28. In 2012, around 4,000 Chevy Sonics were recalled because Chevy forgot to install the brake pads on some of them. Seriously, they forgot to install what's arguably the most important part of a car. By the way, this came to light not because Chevy realized they had an awful amount of brake pads left, but because a rental company received too many complaints about brake noise from their customers, only to find out that their brand new Sonics were missing inner pads. What makes this worse is that this bizarre and unbelievable mistake was made by a company that had been producing cars for 100 years at that time. Number 29. General Motors is the reason why Fiat bought Chrysler. I'll explain. In the year 2000, General Motors bought 20% of Fiat for around $2 billion, while also giving Fiat the option to sell its entire car division to GM. Well, it wasn't actually an option. GM basically gave Fiat the power to legally force GM to buy them out. And sure enough, a couple of years later in 2005, Fiat's automotive division was struggling. So they went to GM, gave them the key to the factory, and told them, "Buy us out, now!" But there was a problem. GM didn't have the money. So they did the next best thing. They offered to give Fiat stock as hush money to not trigger the contract. Yes, they offered to buy Fiat with Fiat's own money. So naturally, Fiat said nope, and they triggered the contract, forcing Chevy to give them another $2 billion on top of giving back the 20% they sold to them in the beginning, meaning Chevy paid Fiat $4 billion for nothing. Later during the financial crisis, American automakers lost a lot of value, while Fiat was flushed with GM's cash, giving them the power to buy Chrysler in 2009, creating the FCA. GM literally spawned their own enemy. Number 30. In 1965, Chevy sold 1,074,925 Impalas, making the Impala the best-selling car in a single year ever, a record which still stands today 60 years later. Number 31. In a desperate attempt to catch young people's attention, Chevy announced the Cruze in 2015 using emojis. Yes, their press release was written entirely in emojis. Now, as you know, the Cruze mostly appealed to old people who didn't know what emojis were. So after the announcement, Chevy received so many complaints that they had to do another press release in understandable English. Number 32. The Camaro has one of the worst blind spots in any car ever. You basically have the same visibility as Stevie Wonder. Number 33. In 2007, Chevy had the brilliant idea to use the internet as free promotion by launching a contest online where people could create their own commercials for the new Chevy Tahoe. And it was genius. Chevy managed to have people create their ads for them completely for free. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything. Because the internet did what the internet does best. They roasted the living hell out of it by making ads bashing the Tahoe for its terrible mileage and ridiculous size. By the way, most of those ads went viral. Now, Chevy tried to play it cool and said they welcomed the quote-unquote conversation, but you could practically hear the panic in the PR department as Mother Nature memes flooded the internet. Originally, Chevy claimed they wouldn't remove the ads because they valued free speech, which was ultimately a lie, because you can't really find those ads anywhere anymore. Number 34. The Duramax diesel engine is actually Japanese. Seriously, it was built by Isuzu in 1998 because Chevy didn't have the time to develop their own. Number 35. This is the Lumina APV. And when it came out in 1990, people immediately started calling it the Dustbuster due to its weird slopey shape, which is hilarious because it later turned out that its designers at Ital Design actually took inspiration from Dustbusters. Like they legit had a Black & Decker Dustbuster in the design studio. Apparently, Chevy thought that if it looked like a dustbuster, it would psychologically catch women's attention, since they used it every day. Number 36. In French, Chevrolet means goat milk. Number 37. Years ago, Chevy started using a capless system for their fuel tanks, but they received so many complaints about clogged fuel filler necks that they started recommending rubber caps for their capless systems. I'll let you think about that for a second. Number 38. Rivalry across car companies has always existed. BMW versus Mercedes, Nissan versus Toyota, and Peugeot versus Otto. Now with that said, those rivalries developed over time from market competition. But for once, the Chevy versus Ford argument can be narrowed down to one single point, and that point is when Chevy introduced their 490 car in 1915. You see, it was called the 490 because it cost $490, the exact same price as the Model T, making it the most direct and least subtle shot at Ford, which is what ignited their decades-long rivalry. Number 39. Here's a weird design. The C8's trunk has soft close, but its doors don't. Number 40. The ever-so-terrible Chevy Vega was specifically designed to not spill its fluids because it was built to stand on its nose. I know you're confused, just hear me out. In 1969, Chevy unveiled the Vega along with their new shipping system, the Vertipack, which allowed Chevy to cut down on shipping costs by almost half with vertical shipping. Now, as most of you know, cars aren't really meant to stand vertically. That's why Chevy specifically designed the Vega for that purpose, by putting baffles in the oil pan to prevent the oil from going into the combustion chamber and putting the reservoirs at an angle to prevent spilling. On paper, the Vertipack made sense. It saved a lot of money on shipping and was environmentally friendly. But when the Vega itself was discontinued due to quality issues, some of which were caused by the Vertipack system, Chevy abandoned the idea altogether in 1977, which I personally think was a mistake. I mean, they were onto something. Number 41. The Suburban has been in production since 1935. That's 90 years straight, making it the longest-running automotive nameplate in history. Number 42. The Lunar Rover was built by Chevy, meaning technically, the first car on the moon was a Chevy. Number 43. The Camaro was originally called the Panther, but right before making their announcement, like a couple of days beforehand, Chevy dropped that name because the executives thought it wasn't suitable for European markets, and it closely followed the animal naming scheme of the Mustang. So, what does Camaro mean? That was the question the press asked a Chevy executive, and his response was, "It's a small vicious animal that eats Mustangs for breakfast." It was a cool response. It was also complete and utter BS, because Camaro means friend in French. It turns out the name-changing thing was such a rush job that Chevy forgot to tell everyone about it. Number 44. The Corvette logo originally had the American flag in it. But since it was illegal to use the American flag for a commercial logo, Chevy decided to replace it with the fleur-de-lis, the symbol for the French monarchy, as a nod to Louis Chevrolet, because his parents were French. Number 45. Chevy lost money on every single C8 they made, and that was intentional. You see, the base price of the C8 was $60,000, while its cost for Chevy was $80,000. Meaning they lost $20,000 on every single one they sold. The reason why Chevy did this is because they needed the C8 to shock the market and create a massive buzz, with Chevy later making their money back on special edition models. And you know what? The $60,000 supercar did shock the market. It created a massive buzz. And Chevy did make a ton of money on the performance models. What they pulled off was risky and impressively smart. Number 46. In 1969, Chevy started offering a liquid tire chain option on their cars, which was a small spray can that was located near each tire and could be sprayed with the press of a button inside the car. It was actually a smart idea and was really helpful in the snow, but since most people didn't want to pay extra for it, it became too expensive for Chevy and was dropped a year later. Number 47. All Malibus come with active noise cancellation. Number 48. In the 50s, racing was all the rage, and pretty much everyone raced. But since it was the 50s and safety wasn't really invented, it got too dangerous. So dangerous that the Automobile Manufacturers Association, which was a group that represented and managed automakers of that time, ordered a complete racing ban because they were afraid of being sued every time someone crashed a fast car. Reluctantly, Chevy, Chrysler, and Ford agreed. But Chevy soon got bored, and they decided to race anyway. So they secretly started building racing parts again and funneled them through backdoor suppliers into private teams' hands with a wink and a handshake. Chevy was basically like, "Oh no, we totally didn't build that high-compression fuel-injected small block for you. It just fell off our truck." But they didn't stop there. They also secretly started funding shadow programs, using people like Zora Arkus Duntov to deliver go-fast parts under the table. Zora basically ran a full-on underground racing cartel. No wonder they sided with him on the Stingray thingy. Oh, and by the way, they never officially got caught, even though everyone knew about it, because the racing teams kept their secret. Everyone just nodded and chuckled at Chevy engineers when their quote-unquote test mules came to be quote-unquote tested. People in the 50s were so cool. Number 49. Chevy recently recalled Tahoes built between 2021 and 2024 due to engine problems, because apparently, the type of oil Chevy recommends for their 6.2-liter V8s isn't actually the correct kind. And their fix? Replacing the oil cap which says 0W20 with a new one that says 0W40. That's it! Number 50. The 1939 Buick Special was the first production car to have turn signals. Number 51. Remember the Real People ads series, where Chevy would bring in actors claiming they were real people to give their opinion on Chevy's new cars in the most awkward, cringy way possible? Well, Chevy did that on purpose. They purposefully made those ads as cringy as possible so people would hate it, make fun of it, create parodies, and give Chevy free publicity. Let's be honest here, they fooled us all. Number 52. In 1966, Chevy hired 100 technicians and placed them in 14 different hotels so they could announce the Camaro over the largest conference call in history, a record which stood for 46 years. Number 53. The Chevy small block V8, which is found in Corvettes, boats, and oil rigs, is the most produced V8 in the world at 100 million units sold. The quote-unquote small block, which has been in production since 1955, starts at 262 cubic inches and goes up to 454. Number 54. In the late 1960s, Chevy had internally limited their engine sizes, and you couldn't get anything bigger than 400 cubic inches on the Camaro. So, if you wanted a Camaro with a 427 V8, you were out of luck. Well, unless you were Don Yanko. You see, at that time, Chevy had a system called the Central Office Production Order, COPO for short, and it allowed dealers to request special fleet vehicles for taxi offices, police departments, and private companies. Enter Don Yanko, a Chevy dealer and race car driver who figured out that through COPO, he could order Camaros with 427 V8s straight from the factory. And not only that, he could even spec them out with heavy-duty cooling systems and performance axles, turning them into factory-ready race cars. So he started secretly ordering them at the end of 1968 and selling them off to private buyers. A couple of months later in 1969, Chevy found out, but instead of shutting him down, they helped make it easier and even made a batch of their own, which weren't advertised and were only offered to the most hardcore racers they knew. Why was everyone so cool back then, and what happened? Number 55. Most Chevys have hidden compartments behind their screens that are pinlock protected. Number 56. The engineers of the Z28 Camaro were so obsessed with weight saving that they replaced the Camaro's windows to save just 400 grams. That's 0.8 pounds, and it's less than what vegetarians poop in a day. By the way, the reason we used vegetarians as an example is because their poops are heavier due to all the fibers they consume. Number 57. The passenger mirror on the C8 is longer than the driver one for improved visibility. Number 58. In 2010, Chevy launched their Switch program, where owners of rival brands like Ford and Honda could bring their cars in, take a brand new Chevy, drive it for a week, bring it back, and leave. No strings attached, no questions asked, no sales pitch given. Chevy even rented parking lots to do this in, because they didn't want people to feel pressured at dealerships. This has to be the boldest, most confident PR move of all time. Number 59. The 1939 Oldsmobile was the first production car with an automatic transmission. Number 60. The 2013 Chevy Traverse was the first car in the world to have a center airbag. You heard that right. It's an airbag meant to protect the driver and passenger from smacking into each other. Number 61. Chevy has a noise and vibration department where they shake their cars for prolonged periods of time to remove any unwanted sounds and rattles that would come up in the future. Number 62. The Chevelle had a little vacuum-operated flap that would open if you mashed on the gas pedal to let more air in, and it's so damn cool. Number 63. Lowriding started with the 1940 Chevy Fleetline. Number 64. In 2014, GM issued a recall for their ignition switches because apparently they weren't designed to withstand heavy keychains, causing the ignition to go to the off position at any given moment, disabling the airbags and the brakes. All in all, 30 million cars were recalled with 124 confirmed deaths, making this the single largest recall by any automaker. By the way, Chevy knew about this from day one, but they did nothing because they thought it was cheaper to settle in court than to issue a recall and design a new part. Which makes this even worse because on top of all the recalls, Chevy was fined $900 million, meaning a lot of innocent people died for nothing. Number 65. In the 90s, California passed their zero-emissions car mandate, forcing automakers to make EVs. So, to comply, Chevy built this, the EV1, which was technically the first mass-produced electric car. And unlike Chevy's usual rush jobs, the EV1 was fantastic. It was sleek, quiet, practical, and most importantly, had a long range. The EV1 was a big success, despite the fact it was a lease-only vehicle, meaning Chevy never sold them, even though the people who leased them begged Chevy to buy them. But wait, if the EV1 was that good, why haven't you seen or heard of it before? Well, because GM recalled and destroyed all of them. Why? Because oil companies pressured GM into doing so after their lobbyists had the mandate revoked. Number 66. The Suburban is the most likely American car to hit 1 million miles, and it's the most reliable car ever built by an American automaker. Number 67. In 1923, Chevy started selling the Series M copper-cooled, which had a 4-cylinder engine that was air-cooled using copper fins. Yes, Chevy made air-cooled engines before Porsche. Anyways, the copper-cooled was an absolute disaster, and it overheated constantly, even in cool weather while idling. The car was so bad that Chevy recalled and destroyed all but 2 of them. And to be fair, this one is completely on Chevy, because during production, Chevy had to scrap 1/3 of them due to engine problems. That's before they even sold them. Like, come on, Chevy! Number 68. Chevy's new top-of-the-line trucks have a transparent trailer view, which lets you see through what you're towing like the trailer doesn't exist. Number 69. When the Corvette originally came out in 1953, Chevy didn't want to spend a lot of money on building a factory for it because they weren't sure it would sell. So, they rented a small facility in Flint, Michigan, and had the workers assemble 300 units by hand, all of which came in white with red interiors. But to Chevy's surprise, they sold like hotcakes, finally convincing them to give it a full production run, meaning the original batch of Corvettes in 1953 were the only hand-built models in its history. Number 70. Here's a fun representation of corporate America. When people started complaining about the 9th-gen Impala's tendency to eat up rear tires, Chevy came out and publicly denied any faults. They even fought multiple cases in court, proving that the 9th-gen Impala was in fact perfectly fine. So far so good, right? Well, while they were denying any and all faults, they were quietly recalling police models and swapping out their rear ends. Gotta love America. By the way, Chevy still hasn't admitted any faults. Number 71. The 1982 Camaro had the weakest V8 to ever be put in a production car. Its 5-liter LG4 V8 only made 143 horsepower. That's 29 horsepower per liter. Just for reference, the 2.5-liter Ultima makes 75 horsepower per liter. Number 72. The 1986 Buick Riviera was the first car with a touchscreen. Number 73. Officially, Chevy doesn't make any right-hand drive production cars because GM pulled out of right-hand markets when they sold Vauxhall and shut down Holden. With that said, right-hand drive models do exist, but they're conversions by local companies and GM's partners, which is a very bizarre move. Number 74. A couple of years ago, when Chevy was caught selling their customers' private data, they defended themselves in a class action lawsuit by saying, "Our cars drive on public roads," meaning the information we gather is public and we can sell it without permission. With a defense like that, they lost and were hit with a 5-year ban on selling data. Number 75. In the 60s, safety wasn't a concern of the American auto industry, and automakers liked it that way because it made production cheap. Enter Ralph Nader, an ex-lawyer who decided to expose just how dangerous American cars were with a little book called Unsafe at Any Speed. And his main target? The air-cooled rear-engine Chevy Corvair. Yes, Chevy used to sell their own version of the 911. Anyways, Nader attacked the Corvair for its poorly designed rear suspension, which was highly prone to rollovers during accidents. This book caused a massive stir, and the public were outraged, forcing the US government to step in and introduce new regulations. Meanwhile, Chevy defended the Corvair, saying the book was lying and the Corvair was perfectly fine. But nobody believed them because the Big Three lost all trust. The Corvair was discontinued in 1969 due to poor sales. Later, in 1972, an NHTSA investigation determined that the Corvair was actually perfectly fine. In fact, its rollover risk was lower than the industry standard at that time, meaning the Corvair was wrongfully accused and Chevy did actually tell the truth. But the damage was done, and the Corvair was lost forever. Number 76. Chevy runs deep. That was their slogan in 2010, and it meant nothing. Nobody knew what it was for and everyone hated it, including Chevy's own dealers. It was even rated by Jalopnik as the worst slogan ever, since it sounded more like a diagnosis than a promise. It was so bad that when Chevy replaced it with Find New Roads, their PR department who originally came up with it called it poorly worded. By the way, Chevy's current slogan is Together Let's Drive. It's not great, but clearly they could do worse. Number 77. Chevy is the most successful brand in NASCAR's history. They have won 847 Cup Series races, 41 manufacturer titles, and 33 driver championships. Number 78. Although it may not seem like it, the new Silverado has spent over 1,000 hours in a wind tunnel. And not just that, the truck went through 7 million miles of testing before going into production. Number 79. In 2002, Chevy discontinued the Camaro due to bad sales, and it was sad because it really seemed like we wouldn't get it back. But the engineers at Chevy decided from day one that they would do anything to bring it back. So they got to work almost immediately and were able to deliver a new concept a couple of years later, which looked amazing. And people really loved it when it was announced in 2006. But although GM had said they would bring it back, they were still hesitant and not fully convinced because they didn't see the demand for it. Around that same time, Michael Bay was working on Transformers, and he was looking for a car to lead the movie. So he contacted GM asking for the new Camaro. Upon hearing that amazing opportunity, the engineers reworked the concept by hand and delivered a fully functioning model. A year later, when the movie came out, the fans fell in love with the new Camaro, and Bumblebee was so well received that GM fully got on board and finally made up their mind. So, if it wasn't for Bumblebee, we probably wouldn't have the Camaro today. Number 80. The 2002 Avalanche that started the weird sport utility truck segment was the first production truck to have side steps embedded in the rear bumper and the first truck with the midgate. Number 81. Here's a crazy fact. The first gen Impala was only built in 1958. Yes, it was a one-year model. But wait, there's more. The second gen was only built for 2 years, the third gen for 3, and the fourth gen for 5. So, in the span of 10 years, the Impala went through 4 different generations. Just for reference, the last 4Runner was in production for 13 years straight. Chevy had too much money back then. Number 82. The Chevy Colorado has been built in Brazil, Missouri, and Thailand, but never in Colorado itself. I just love the irony. Number 83. The Corvette's front-end lift has GPS memory, and it can store up to 1,000 places at once, meaning it will automatically raise the front end at the locations you previously lifted the front end at, like gas stations, driveways, and speed bumps. Number 84. You know how muscle cars in the golden era came with brightly colored engine blocks? Well, that all started with Chevy in 1956, when they started painting them in their famous Chevy orange. Now don't get me wrong, automakers painted their blocks before 1956, but they were painted to prevent rust, not to brag and stand out like Chevy. Number 85. Here's some fantastic Chevy logic. In the 90s, the window switches on the Impala, which were located in the most awkward position ever, had up fully written, but down shortened to DN, because Chevy didn't want to spend a few extra cents per car to write more than 2 letters on the switch. Number 86. The 1991 S10 Tahoe had 2 cup holders inside the glove box. It's probably the stupidest cup holder location ever. Let us know if you know of any that would be more stupid. Number 87. When the Corvette's chief engineer Taj Juchter decided to retire in 2024 after being with the company for 47 years, Chevy decided to give him a gift. A small portrait of him etched on every new C8 built after his retirement. Happy retirement, bud. Number 88. Chevy invented magnetic ride control in 1999, and every company that uses it, including Ferrari, pays them royalties to license it. Number 89. The Corvair Monza Spyder Turbo was the first production car to have a turbo in 1962. Number 90. The name Corvette means a small, fast, maneuverable warship. Number 91. The coolest car GM has ever built, in my opinion, is the 3.8-liter V6 turbocharged Buick GNX. And just to add to its coolness, the GNX was so torquey and powerful that the engineers had to specifically tune the suspension to keep the front wheels on the ground. Number 92. Back in the muscle car era, Chevy and pretty much every other automaker were playing horsepower hide-and-seek with the insurance companies, because by the late 60s, insurers had figured out that cars with big engines and a lot of horsepower tended to wrap themselves around telephone poles. In response, they started jacking up premiums for anything fast. Chevy's solution? Stop telling the truth. Instead of listing the engine's gross horsepower, the unfiltered, no-accessory dyno in a vacuum number, they started reporting net horsepower, which factored in real-world stuff like the alternator, exhaust, emissions, and the laws of physics. The difference? Sometimes a 450 horsepower muscle car magically turned into a 275 horsepower family car. On paper, it was a legal sleight of hand that let you get a fire-breathing big block while still pretending you were a responsible citizen at the DMV. Number 93. The glass in the C6 ZR1's hood is made from the same material fighter jets use in their canopies. Number 94. Have you ever wondered why the PT Cruiser and HHR look almost identical? Well, funny story actually. When the weird PT Cruiser came out in the year 2000, it somehow became a hit, and Chevy wanted to create a car to compete with it. But instead of being subtle about it, they straight up stole its designer, Brian Nesbitt, from Chrysler, and told him to do it again in 2005. And that's how we got the PT Cruiser 2.0, aka the HHR. Number 95. Chevy almost bought Ford for $8 million in 1909, but the deal fell through because when William C. Durant asked for a loan to buy Ford, he was literally, and I do mean literally, laughed out of the bank. A couple of years later, Henry Ford came up with the assembly line, and the rest is history. Number 96. The The 1964 Pontiac GTO was the first official muscle car. Number 97. The new Camaro has one of the smallest trunk openings of any production car compared to its size. You can fit a body inside there, but not a medium-sized box. Why? Because Chevy wanted to keep the taillight design of the original Camaro, but regulations didn't allow them to attach the taillights to the trunk lid itself, since the taillights need to be visible at all times, including when the trunk lid is open. So they decided to just make it unusable. Number 98. The first Chevy pickup truck, the 1918 Model T, was built and sold as a rolling chassis, meaning the buyer had to build the body themselves. Number 99. The Oldsmobile Curved Dash was the first car to have a speedometer in 1901. Number 100. You can order a Silverado with the snowplow package from factory. Now, the package doesn't include the blade itself since it would be highly illegal, but it does give you heavy-duty front springs, reinforced suspension, a high-powered alternator, front-mounted wiring harness, and extra undercarriage protection, all for $200, which is really cheap. Number 101. Only one 1983 Corvette exists because during that year's production, Chevy ran into so many problems and quality issues that they couldn't build more than one car. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you want to see a video on Cadillac and GMC.